Hey, well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Collision Live. Daniel here, joined at the desk by the SpongeBob SquarePants to my Patrick, Mr. Samuel David Kemp. How you doing?
Doing all right. I'm a lot younger than you are these days.
I know if I look a little more distinguished, wise, wizened,
Haggard and gray.
it's because I galloped straight into my mid-30s. I had a birthday yesterday. I feel like it should be like a national holiday or some more monumental occasion, but anyway, it was my birthday. I'm still young enough to enjoy birthdays and not dread them.
Not hide the fact
sucking
that you
away
have one.
the years of my life. But I had a good birthday. I thought I would just share a little bit because hey, it's my birthday and I can do what I want to do. My wife was at working. My kids are at school, so I got to take the day off for my own birthday to spend it as I wanted to, which meant I went hopping around to some great used bookstores. This is my heaven on earth, my paradise, my apologetic argument for the existence of God. So this is my findings. I found some gems.
The used bookstore is your apologetic argument for God.
Therefore, there is a God who loves his children. If my wife ends up watching this live stream and sees this stack of books, just know that the stack I had hauling around before I kind of weeded through and just found the best. My arms are legit still sore from hauling that around. But my wife also, she knows me well, so she gave me my own birthday gift. So let's throw that on here. So what I like to call my heroic pose as I continue to live out my deep fantasy of becoming a dragon slaying knight. So she gave me some nice shiny knight gauntlets to go with my armor. So I'm slowly piecing this thing together to have my full suit of armor. And when I do, yes, I will do a live stream in a full armored
Fully
attire.
garbed.
But hey, it was fun. Knights are cool. And all that stuff. But, yeah,
Maces are cool.
Maces are cool. Helmets are cool. I just need to get the breastplate, and I'm off to the races. But excited to be back. So to talk about one of the only things I like as much as my birthday is talking about pop culture, dialogue. And if you guys haven't joined us before, Collision Live. This is just our weekly live stream where we kind of look at what's going on in today's pop culture and kind of approach it, dialogue about it as kind of from a Christian biblical worldview. Had a couple of kind of more general, interesting stuff to get into this week. So I encourage you guys, share your thoughts in the comments section, join with what we're talking about. But to kick things off, like we always do here at the Collision Live, we got pop culture news. So not a whole lot necessarily going on of big stories in pop culture news. The one that jumped out to me is Indiana Jones 5 just wrapped filming. Featuring the national treasure of Harrison Ford, who is a couple months away from turning 80 years old, and he's still cooler than I will ever be. So I think this movie's supposed to come out probably next year, I'm guessing, by the time they finish editing and all that. But he's still going. Indiana Jones never dies. Another kind of story that's getting a lot of buzz and just sort of discussion. AMC announced a new kind of pricing strategy, which they call surge pricing, which is just their nice kind of fancy way of saying, hey, we know you want to see the Batman and we can charge you more for it because we know you're going to pay. So this is sort of what they're starting to roll out as far as adapting the pricing based on the interest in the film. I'm hoping that means that Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is like free, or they're paying you to go to it if they're consistent with that. But I'm assuming now from now on, Marvel movies, all those big ones, they're going to be charging you more because people will pay for that. And we can't have a pop culture news a week without a sequel and kind of nostalgia and all that kind of stuff. The property returning this week, flavor of the week, I Am Legend, the original one of this featuring Will Smith. They just announced that they're making a sequel to this movie featuring Michael B. Jordan, who's an awesome actor. The announcement said that Will Smith is returning. Spoiler alert for an old movie, but I don't remember him making it out alive in the last movie, so I don't know what all that means. But hey, I like this kind of movie, so interested in that. And maybe the last thing that kind of a lot of people discussion about it's probably a bigger discussion than we can get into like a pop culture news, maybe in a main topic in a week to come. But this is trending not just this morning on Twitter. Disney Stay Gay, and this is related to again, we're not going to get into politics here, but some bills that were passing in Florida, and kind of some heat being put on the Disney CEO about not speaking out more boldly. Again, this is sort of the newer CEO after the torch has been passed, and his statement, his letter that was released, is this sort of an interesting. I think there's a lot to wrestle with. This talking about, hey, we're a corporation. We don't necessarily our job isn't to speak out on all political issues. We represent a lot of people. It's not about what I believe. It's about the company. There's just a lot of stuff in there. But it is a sort of another example of kind of that collision between politics and corporations and business and kind of pop culture and this kind of newer expectation that you can't separate the two. They have to be combined. So yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff as a Christian to kind of work through with some of that, even if it's can get somewhat messy. But those are all I got this week for pop culture news. So, Sam, why am I not as cool as Harrison Ford at 79?
Yeah, that's the question that every man must ask himself at some point in life. Like, no matter, what you do, who you are, you'll never be as good looking or as awesome as Harrison Ford. And that's just a fact. And that's something we all have to live with. But,
Because I think I've made my argument before that I think prime Harrison Ford is unmatched. Like that stretch he had where he's just like, Indiana Jones, Han Solo, The Fugitive, all those kind of movies. Like
there can be no other. And that's just, you have to accept facts. And that's just the way it is.
Like he is the best.
And the fact that he's almost 80 and still like just rapping an Indiana Jones movie is just insane to me. Like, what a legend.
I know. It's kind of like we talked about John Williams last week or 2 weeks ago. Like,
almost,
you got to enjoy it while you can, because obviously we hope he lives many years longer. But
I did have a question about the surge pricing. Is that based on the film or is that based on time of day?
I think it's the film. So okay. And I don't know how necessarily. I guess they have all their analytics of like what's more hyped. Some of it's just sort of the eyeball test. Like, hey, the Batman. People are excited for this. Sonic the Hedgehog, maybe not super excited. Some of those.
I wonder and I haven't looked into this at all, but I wonder what that does to like contracts for actors and people who make the film. If AMC is deciding not to like charge what they normally would charge for it, like if they discount a film, like I don't know what kind of ripple effects that. Like surely they have like a minimum.
Yeah, and I'm guessing.
I'm guessing it's only going to go up.
Yeah, like I'm guessing they're only they only surge one direction, and maybe this is too. And we'll get into kind of the more topical stuff in a second. But maybe this is too inside baseball of like the industry and stuff. But even when I think like box office numbers like are so meaningless at this point. Like people, is Endgame going to pass Avatar? Is this movie going to make more than Spider-Man? And like just unless you like actually have like the number of tickets sold, like the pricing of movies has changed, and even now in the same year, movies are going to cost different things. The fact that a movie made more money doesn't really say anything about the success of the.
I still want to see the dollar theater. Like that needs to come back. I think.
I know there was a dollar theater.
It just closed down.
This closed down.
We used to go there as kids.
Yeah.
And
you go see like the hot new movie like 13 months after it released from the.
Well, you could probably see like 6 months after it was released.
The main thing is, hey, movies are expensive, and some movies I just don't want to pay full price or surge pricing for. But let us know, you guys think any of that stuff that stands out to you, and why is Harrison Ford so awesome? But the first topic that we thought we'd get into, this is the thing actually that Sam kind of brought up the other day, and we were talking about, hey, why don't we just carry this conversation on to the Collision Live, and that's cartoons. I think
something I love.
Yeah, something that Sam, part of his daily or weekly ritual, cartoons. It is part of our like culture. Like a lot of these like icons, and like it's part of I think growing up. Like
certainly most people's childhood. I think.
Yeah, which I was kind of thinking, like even like
cartoons.
The whole like I feel like for someone maybe like our age, like and up, like Saturday morning cartoons like hold some kind of nostalgia. Like now with like streaming. Like my kids don't know what Saturday morning cartoons are, like, cause they just go on to like Disney Plus or something. Like, so I don't know. We feel like we've lost something as a culture when we don't have Saturday morning cartoons. But
that's true.
But it's sort of this interesting medium because it's prevalent. It's probably the most like one of the more like bankable things. Like there's always sort of these cartoons. And I think there's a lot of like stigmas for it and like perspectives on it and like and I think even just like. It tends to get viewed as like it's a thing for kids. Like we think cartoons, we think kids, we think live action, we think it's for mature adults. And is that even like is that the case? Like, what do we do with cartoons? Like is there at the Collision Live we kind of approach it as like from like a Christian perspective. Like is there anything in there at cartoons? Is there potential? Is it just for kids? Like what do you think?
Yeah, I mean I certainly don't think it's just for kids. I do think it has that maybe stigma that I guess is a holdover from like Saturday morning cartoons and maybe like the Looney Tune era of, when cartoons were coming out, it was mostly like sort of zany Roadrunner v Wile E. Coyote type stuff, and so I think maybe it sort of that stigma has carried over and as it's evolved. But like, even we were saying before we started filming, it's like there's just such a wide variety of cartoon sort of, and I don't know, maybe people sort of break this out differently, but there's just like there's things from like Pixar to any of like the comic book type cartoons. Like there's a lot of Batman cartoons that are sort of their own thing. There's a whole genre of anime that's cartoon. Then there's like all the sort of adult cartoons like Family Guy,
Like
The Simpsons, American Dad, BoJack Horseman, all these cartoons that are certainly not for children. And so I don't know. There's all these different sort of ways that people do cartoons, and there's so many different, I think, themes that you can explore within cartoons. And I guess something that makes it really powerful is that you sort of aren't constricted by like the laws of gravity and just sort of the reality of physical space. And so you can do things and explore stories in a way I think that can be in some ways maybe more compelling than if you had to like get an actor to go like do these things. You can do it in cartoons. It's a sort of a way to like just sort of supersede all of that and almost be sort of a hyper reality of some theme or some emotion or whatever. And I think that's what can make it very compelling.
Yeah, and that's kind of my like. Again, I got my I'm a nerd, so I got my PhD in like aesthetics and kind of the philosophy of art and theology of art. So I like to ask kind of nerdy questions when it comes to this stuff. And one of the things I was thinking about even as we were talking about this topic is like, is there anything in like the medium of like animation that is for kids? Like, is it just that it's this stigma? Is like, hey, the first cartoons are kind of aimed towards kids, so now we still think of that, even though there's lots of cartoons for adults? Or is it like there's just something about like the actual like animation that's just sort of better suited or more like childish? Like, I don't know. Like, is it just like a stigma? Because like, cause we don't really break down like other kind of art forms and stuff in that way. That like, hey, if it's drawn by hand, it must be for a child. So well, we draw lots of stuff by hand for adults. Like,
well, and I don't know, and I wonder too if it's just sort of the color palette. I think also makes it somewhat. Maybe there's sort of a childish stigma to like bright colors, which it seems like a dumb thing, but you sort of think like more like darker and more muted colors seems somehow more adultish, and then like bright, just real like neon colors and lots of different colors is more of like kiddie. And so I don't know if it has to do with the coloring.
Because I think that is because I feel like kids are drawn. Like if even my own kids, like if I were to like give them the options of like some kind of bright cartoon, or like my kids are 7, or like a live action thing, like even if it's like they're both like superhero stories or something, like they're gonna be drawn, I think, towards the more cartoon and like the color of it. Because like the irony is like you have some snobs that are like cartoons are just for kids. I prefer like more realistic films, and they're watching some like
Thor.
Yeah, like Thor. Like the MCU, and there's like these flying superheroes, and like
Yeah, because that is. I mean, it's interesting because that is like most of those superhero movies are like 90% digital. Like
it's like a real person in like a green room where the animators are.
So it's like completely animated, but it's animated to look like real life. And so, but it's still an entire like animation. And so I think, I don't know. I think that's what kind of sets it apart. Maybe is because it's all like colorful and it's obviously not like real, that people kind of can sort of have, I think, misconceptions about like, what it is and if it's useful at all to sort of explore.
Yeah, and I think it has changed. Like, I don't know if it's just like the Pixar effect of like, hey, you can make animation that's not just like cartoon dropping like an anvil on another cartoon character. Like, it's not just like silly, zany. Like, you can tell deep stories. Like, even I have kids, and like sometimes all like some of the shows they put on, like it's always like and some orphan, and like it's these like tragic, deep stories, and they're learning how to move on with like, from hurt and loss, and like, it's like a cartoon. I think, oh, this is a little too like, this is a little too deep. Maybe we should like put like, like one of the Marvel movies on or something, like something that's not quite as like weighty as these cartoons that they're watching. But I do think like, I think maybe it's like both. Like maybe there is something about like animation that is sort of more appealing to kids. But I do feel like the stigma part has been changing at least a little bit, as far as like, hey, you can actually tell some great stories. And like, I think even just as like Christians, the Christian community, like, we might not always have like the like, studio sets and like, all that kind of stuff to be able to like produce these big blockbusters kind of, stories. But like, I think obviously animation takes a ton of work. It's not like it's like easy. Oh, just draw it, do it a cartoon. Instead of doing like it's tons of work, tons of skill. But I don't know. Maybe it is like an avenue where Christians can be involved in telling kind of these bigger stories without sort of the financial and like resource backing of like a Hollywood set or.
No, I mean I think because like with everything, there's so many levels of cartoon, and you can do like short film cartoons. You could do stop motion. That's sort of its own thing as well. And so I think the cool thing about cartoons is like you're able to do things that you can't do sort of in real life and with real film, as it were. And so I think that's sort of the beauty of it. And like I think a great example is like the movie Up, where like you're able to like do these like display these emotional just these emotions that these characters have, almost more so than you would with if you had actors. I mean, like actors obviously can portray emotion, but like I think there's something that you can do like in sort of these cartoonish faces that is almost like sort of a hyper like a hyper version of sort of whatever that emotion is. Like it's all sort of like magnified, amplified. That's the word. Sort of amplified emotion of fear or love or anxiety or whatever. Like you can do it on such a bigger scale, I think, than like just sort of an actor like really trying to like portray this emotion in their face. And so I think that's sort of one of the areas where I think cartoons can really be valuable.
And it's even just
in storytelling.
And it's just like an art. Like, 'cause I got the chance a couple of years ago to like go into like on Warner Brothers studio, like into their studio, and like actually meet with like some of their animators and stuff, and like see all their desks and all their like scrap paper where they're working on like the new Batman comic and some of that kind of stuff. And like it's art. Like it's these, whether it's for kids or not, like the actual like what they're creating is like an art form that I think we can appreciate, even if it's like, hey, maybe it's geared younger than me. But let us know, like, is there an area in there for, we're not necessarily saying that, every Christian should just watch Saturday morning cartoons every week. That's for the kingdom. But there is something in there, I think, for cartoons. It's sort of an untapped avenue that maybe is even like an easier entry point than like trying to go blow for blow with Hollywood studios, and like we got to make our own big blockbusters. So I think there is something to it. But let us know what you guys think, and maybe let us know what some of your favorite cartoons are. If you have any that good nostalgic ones that have stayed with you, we'd love to hear about that.
And why it's Captain Planet.
Yeah, and why it is Captain Planet, which they did announce they were making a live action version of that. I don't know if that fell through. I can't imagine why that one has come to fruition, but hey, if they make it, I will definitely be doing a review for that. But something else that people like to hear about, something else that some might argue is an art form that is very elegant. We have Host Corner. So this is my week. Sam, I can't remember what Sam talked about last week. I'm sure it moved me, it touched me deep and emotionally in my soul. But this is my chance to kind of share something I'm excited about. And it's a movie that I think is sort of has a cult following, but we just don't talk about the greatness of this enough. This is Willow, kind of the classic fantasy film. This thing came out in '88, so I was a wee little lad when this thing was coming out. I was 1 year old, but this thing still holds up. This thing was, I think, one of the first movies that I watched with my wife on Disney Plus. They're making a show for it if you've never seen it, but now is the time to get ready for that show. And it's sort of a film, the kind of film that they just don't make anymore. It has Val Kilmer being awesome as Mad Mardigan, the swordsman, Warwick Davis from all the Star Wars movies playing kind of the lead kind of magician, small town character, trying to save this like destiny child from the evil witch. A very basic kind of fantasy story, but it's original. This isn't based on some property. This is sort of an original world, original story. They didn't make 100 sequels, although they are making a TV show. So kind of this kind of reflects the good old days, and you can just make classic, fantasy stories and move on without having to keep, some kind of cinematic universe. So if you've never seen Willow and you have Disney Plus, or you can find it a store somewhere, check it out. It is very worth it, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Sam, are you a Willow? Have you seen this movie?
Yeah, so I'll admit that I have not seen this,
Oh.
and so I think there's now a rift in our friendship.
Don't be a Sam Camp. Be enlightened. Be caught up with pop culture.
So what would you say this is most closely like? Because I have like zero context. I know nothing about this movie. Like, what is it like? Like, what would you say it?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what
Like you're saying, it's an original fantasy.
It's like original fantasy, very simple. There's a dark queen taking over the world. Prophesies that some child will be born that will almost like a biblical thing. That will overtake her. So she's trying to take all the babies, kill all the babies that could be there. The baby escapes, and a very kind of Moses down the river gets saved by Walrick Davis's kind of small town wizard character, and he has to kind of learn what to do with this. But it deals with this, all this, it's sort of like Tolkien, like there's creatures and stuff, although mostly people, but it just deals with those themes of like the small people and the big people and coming together and like good versus evil. And I don't know, it's fun. It's not like a dark, gritty, it's lighthearted. Val Kilmer's funny, he's cool, but it is definitely, we need more of these.
I'll have to check it out sometime.
And hopefully the show, the Disney Plus show, I think comes out later this year. And just hope it's not. Hope it
doesn't ruin your childhood.
Yeah, hope it doesn't destroy my childhood. But hey, we always have the original Willow. And this one, I think the story was made by George Lucas. Ron Howard directed it, who also directed a Star Wars movie. But like George Lucas was the producer of this, so it's very much like kind of that era, and you can see a lot of like that same Star Wars-y stuff in it. So let me know why it's awesome, or if you haven't seen it, encourage you to do that this week. But kind of our second topic for this week, kind of perhaps the most broad topic we've ever done here at the Collision Live, but there's a reason for this, that this sort of jumped out to me. It's this question, like, what is pop culture? This is our pop culture, not always just pop culture, it's kind of wider culture here at the Collision Live, but most of what we talk about is like pop culture. How as Christians do we navigate pop culture? What's coming out in pop culture? What's new? How is it influencing us? So I thought maybe we could just take a step back and just sort of what is pop culture, and like, not the specifics of it, and like, what is it? Does it matter for Christians? Like, why does it matter? So this is my wife's finishing up her college degree. She'll be finished in a couple weeks, actually. And she's taking one of her last classes that she has to take is like weird pop culture psychology. I don't really know what the class is about, but it's like this pop culture thing. So she was reading her textbook and just trying to slog through it. And I eat this stuff up. So I was sitting like looking over her shoulder and like, it's like, oh, I'm so jealous that you get to take this college class. Trying to read the textbook and wanting to like engage with it, and she just wants to get it done and graduate. But it was the stuff I was reading over her shoulder was just about like, what is pop culture? Like, it's hard. We kind of know what like, hey, this is Harry Potter is pop culture, or Steven Spielberg is pop culture. But like, what kind of makes it pop culture? Like, why is it this massive part of our society and like everyday life? So what do you think? Like, what is this throw you right on the spot? So this tricky question, why doesn't Sam just give us the answer? What is?
Well, it's culture that's popular, Daniel, and I'm glad you asked, and I'm glad I could clear that up for you and our audience.
As opposed to unpopular culture,
which very few people know about.
Here is dictionary.com, at least their attempt to answer the question. Is this cultural activities or commercial products reflecting, suited to, or aimed at the tastes of the general masses of people? And again, I think there's kind of like even just art, like there really isn't a way to define it, and that includes everything. Because you hear the definitions, you're like, well, this doesn't fit, you could do this, like, so they're really, and that's even what my wife's textbook was kind of getting into, is like it's hard to define other than just like seeing what is pop culture that we think of it, and like what do they have in common.
Well, because there's just so many sort of branches, I feel like, of pop culture, because like you can have things that are pop culture that are like say Animal Crossing, or Fortnite, or Roblox, or something that's like a huge subset of population is going to know about that and love those things or whatever. But there's also like a lot of people who probably have never heard of it, or maybe in passing, but have no interest whatsoever in it. And like, it's still pop culture, but like, it's like less pop culture maybe than like, say, you know, the superhero Batman or something. Like, everybody knows about Batman or Elvis or Michael Jackson or some of these sort of icons of pop culture. But there's like, I don't know, maybe levels of pop culture.
Yeah, and obviously some things are maybe more put more of the pop in pop culture than other things. I think like you said, the like kind of the common denominators are just that that it's widespread, obviously popular culture. That it's not some like niche like, hey, I'm really into this like, you know, this folk bluesy metal band, you know, from like, you know, Scandinavia or something. Like it's something that like people know even if they don't like know what it is. Like there's lots of stuff that I recognize, like, oh, I know that character's from, but even like Breaking Bad, like I've never seen that show, but like I know the characters, I know the story basically. I can recognize lots just because it's been everywhere, and like it's sort of become part of our, you know, I pick up like jokes based on it, even though I haven't seen the show.
It's so sort of infused in the populace, I guess.
Yeah, so sort of this like it is this like connection point of, and I think like the Batman that just came out, check out our review. The movie rocks. Is like kind of a great example of like pop culture. Like this thing came out, you know, over the weekend, and like it's just everywhere. People are talking about it on Twitter. Like you go out to the store and you hear people talking about it. You know, you see like billboards for it. It's on the TV. I can get ads on my thing. Like, you know, there's the store. There's like toys of it for kids to play with. Like I'm sure there'll be the Batman. Like there always is like at Halloween. Like it's just sort of this like, you know, this moment and like of this like character where like people from all different parts of like society kind of, it's like common ground almost. Which I think is like, as far as like why should Christians care about pop culture? Like I think you can definitely like go too far. Like there is like I think even just by definition, like that it's so big, like there is like a superficial level to like pop culture. Like it is very like commercial and like mass produced. Like this isn't going to the, you know, to like the art gallery and, you know, this very, you know, limited, and like you have to have like some kind of knowledge and like training to really understand. Like it's this very base level of like, hey, it's a superhero movie, or it's a cool video game, or like it's like there is that level to it, but it's something that like does connect people. Like it does sort of launch these conversations.
Well, I like what you said, because it is sort of it's common ground, right? And I think that's if you know, look beyond pop culture, there's not a lot of common ground these days, sort of across the aisle and between different groups. And so I think that is something that we should take advantage of, and we should try and appreciate and engage with, because it is common ground, and maybe common ground is less common today, or feels less common today than, you know, a few years ago. And so I think that is sort of a point of entry, I think, in conversations with people, just sort of engaging with what's happening, and you know, there just fewer and fewer places of commonality, I feel like, among the population. And so I think we should certainly seize on those when we can.
Yeah, and obviously people are we're a bunch of selfish jerks most of the time, and like, you know, we tend to make even pop culture somewhat like, you know, you like the new Disney Star Wars movies? What a loser! I don't even like the, you know, the original. The true Star Wars fans only like we just do that. Like
you're always going to sort of like devolve into tribalism, regardless of how common something is.
But it is something that like, even if you're like, you know, just being a big snob about it online or something, like it is still like a common conversation that like you might not agree. You don't need to agree that it, you know, but you have this like, we're both interested in some level of it. I think kind of the other part of pop culture that came out in a lot of the different like definitions that was in my wife's textbook, and I was looking online, is like that it's sort of this like this circle of like, it reflects the like values and like thoughts and like desires of like culture, but it could also like turns that around and like influences them. Like it shapes sort of the way we, you know, the desires and kind of the way we think as a society, even as it sort of is like a mirror to show that. And like I think like as Christians, like that becomes extremely important. If this is
Yeah.
like, in both sides of that, like if this is like, if you want to understand the culture, like look at the pop culture that is reflecting so much of like sort of in like an amplified sense of like what matters to our society, the stories and stuff. And if that's also like influencing people, then like
Yeah.
we're invested in the sort of narratives that are shaping the people that God sent us to reach.
Right, and I would say if you don't like what you see in pop culture, then like that's sort of a good indication of like the failings of the church at large. Is we've sort of neglected our responsibility to be an influence in culture. Like obviously not like you can't change every heart, but like if you're seeing pop culture go in a direction that you don't like, then ask yourself like, so in what way have we as Christians sort of just pulled away from that and just sort of let it go? But then if we do that, we don't really have a right to sort of complain about it and get upset about it, because we sort of just given up our responsibility to be participants in that the shaping of that pop culture.
Yeah, it's easier to kind of just bemoan how horrible it is, how
Yeah.
godless it is, than it is to actually like be involved and like train up Christians and stuff to be in the not necessarily that all Christians should just go make a bunch of like commercial easy like
Yeah.
it's easier to sell certain like messages than like there are films like a Christian could make that deal with really deep stuff and like biblical stuff that like it's just never going to be pop culture
Sure.
because that doesn't reflect what a lot of people want or believe. Like, so it's not as easy, I guess, as just like, hey, just go make, why don't Christians just make their own, the CCU of, cinematic universe or something. Like it's obviously it's more involved than just that. But I think Christians can be involved in like pop culture and like understanding what's going on. Like, that's what we try and do here at the Collision. Is just like, hey, what conversation? Hey, Batman's a cultural conversation. Like, how can we kind of dialogue about that, or what does that reflect, or how is that kind of influencing people, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to just be Batman. But could you guys let us know what you guys think? What is sort of your perspective on like what makes something pop culture? Is it just like this bad kind of commercial, or there's like billboards and advertisement kind of shoving you will watch the new Batman movie, or is it more to that? Like is it kind of a natural part of just like societies telling stories and kind of art putting out there and kind of into like these visual characters and stuff, and kind of wrestling with real issues, even if it's in a very even if people start seeing dollar signs and they want to sell that to you. I think there is a very important role for Christians to be engaged in, and just sort of have their voice, share their thoughts along kind of the yelling and the masses of all that. So let us know what you guys think of that. This week at the Collision, speaking of dealing with cultural stuff and cultural conversations, I got a lot of stuff going here at the Collision. Could you guys check out? Like I just mentioned, the Batman came out, and so I kind of took some time to try and just think through that character. He's kind of a complicated character, just sort of reflections on things that I think, the reasons why this character sort of this continues to permeate our society. So good to check that out. Also, we reviewed The Batman, both on our YouTube channel and on thecollision.org. So if you've seen the movie, if you're thinking about seeing the movie, if you want to just talk about the movie, could you check out the review in either one of those places. We're also excited we announced last week that we are going to be offering our Collision Live as a podcast, audio only form. You want to hear what we say, you just want to have to look at us for 30 minutes. This is your chance, the Collision Live podcast. So this thing, we're still kind of waiting for like iTunes and all that to finish processing, but this thing should be available in the next day or two. I think it's already on Spotify.
Yeah, you should be able to find it wherever you get your podcast. So.
Yeah, so if you can't always join us at
so.
your lunch break or something, but you have a commute or you just want to kind of listen to us in the background as you do other stuff, we'll be sending out the links for that. But love to have you subscribe to that. And we'd love to have you subscribe to The Collision. If you haven't done so, subscribe to our channel, like the video, like our Facebook page, all that stuff. Just join with what we're doing. Things are ramping up as we're sort of slowly moving towards kind of like the summer months of movies and culture and stuff. So we'd love to have you guys join us for that. Any other kind of final things?
Yeah, just continue to pray for good health for Harrison Ford so we can get Indiana Jones
6.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait for my kids to bring their kids to the theaters to see the new Harrison Ford Indiana Jones movie.
Figure out that Tree of Life pretty soon, so we can't lose him.
Yeah, so hopefully they figure out cloning or whatever. But thanks, guys, for watching. Once again, stay safe and continue to collide with the world for Christ.